And we are live on Discovery Paranormal. So, when you think of fallen angels, what do you think of? Do you think of, like, as soon as I say those words, fallen angels, if you're religious, you're going to think of what you were taught in your religion. If you're Jewish, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, I mean, everybody's got some kind of version of a fallen angel, right? Or what that really is. So, and of course, when it comes to humans, the history is sketchy because nobody was really responsibly recording events. So it all came from just stories. And you have to read between the lines of these stories, especially since a lot of these stories were told in not in English, and they had to be eventually translated into English for people who speak English to understand. So then came along people like King James, who put a lot into translation, but they put their stint on it, and they put a male stint on it. They put their end of what they believe their regime of power. They put that stint on it, right? Supposedly Jesus wasn't about all that anyway. You know, kind of like the stories that I understand, and the stories from even like the Navajo, the ancient stories, all these stories that go back, they all say the same thing. If you choose the simple path, that's the path to the kingdom. If you go into the complicated, dirty, smudgy, nasty, gross path of megalomania, then that's the way to non-existence. Not necessarily hell. I mean, Jesus didn't talk a lot about hell. He talked more about like if you're worthy, you go on. So life is really like one of those crazy Japanese game shows. And where your life is really on the line every minute of the day, every minute of the day. So I get that. I understand that. And I understand the best feeling in the world is to be able to help somebody who really needs the help. Not the people who are habitually like always have something, they always got something going on, they always need some kind of help. Those people need a different type of help so they can get on their feet. But there are people who just get knocked off their feet, and that's when a friend is going to be there to help them, right? That's the deal. So the kindness, the love, and the help, that's the path that you want to be on. The other stuff is going to take you away from that path and take you down the path of just a misery, right? Misery. And you look at the people in in Hollywood. Look at all the ones who are out there who just look what they sacrificed for what? Some wealth, some fame. Wow, really? But yet, but your sacrifice of what's inside of you. Do you see any of them living on the level where you know what? I'll put it this way: like The Rock. He's the only one I can name. The Rock is a dude who actually helps out little people here and there, and whether they're publicity stunts or whatever you want to call them, I actually think he's genuinely a nice guy. But that's rare to find that. So it's rare in general, right? So anyway, in John Milton's 17th century poem, Paradise Lost, both obedient and fallen angels play an important role. They appear as rational individuals. Their personalities is similar to that of humans. The fallen angels are named after entities from both Christian and pagan mythology, such as Moloch or Shemosh, Dagon, Belial, Beelzebub, and even Satan. Right. Following the whole Christian narrative, Satan convinces other angels to live free from the laws of God. Thereupon, they are cast out of heaven. Right? That's one interesting end of it. So the poem starts with the fallen angels in hell. The first portrayal of God in the book is given by fallen angels, who describe him as a questionable tyrant and blame him for their fall. Outcast from heaven, the fallen angels established their own kingdom in the depths of hell with a capital called Washington, D.C., called Pandemonium. Pandemonium. Unlike most earlier Christian representations of hell, it is not the primary place for God to torture the sinners, but the fallen angels' own kingdom. The fallen angels even build a palace, play music, they freely debate, nevertheless, without divine guidance. The fallen angels themselves turn hell into a place of suffering. So it's hell because you are not under control. You're able to debate, you're able to build your palaces, you play your music, eat some good food, and also you end up mating with the human women. Now, it's interesting that how they depict all the fallen angels are men, where there had to be some women in there at some point. Yeah, no. The idea of fallen angels plays the really. I mean, so think about it. And all these different people who wrote after that, of course, they had the whole fallen angel thing, right? But okay, all right. Anyway, that's one end of it. That's the that's the end of it where I would say the limited ignorant type of view end of it, because often everything comes down to interpretation. Every culture tells some kind of story on these beings that were coming down from the sky. They were in fire chariots, and some people would say. The Hopi Indians described them as the ant people because they look like ants, the heads look like ants, and whatever. You know what? They taught them how to do everything. The Hopi Indians encountered these people 17,000 years ago. They were using chicken bones as tools. And these beings came down and started cutting stone and moving things around and doing all this stuff, working with the land, right? Building, working with it, and also showing humans how to do these things too without the tools, but giving them the ideas of them, right? Okay. So apparently, when these fallen angels came down, they got together with a lot of women and they had kids. Now, angels plus human women is going to make some interesting children, probably, right? So then we talk about the Nephilim. So the Nephilim were apparently this race of giants who were the offspring of the angels and these women, right? Anyway, and there's a lot of hodgepodge on who they are, what they were, even pointing at Goliath, the story of David and Goliath. That Goliath was one of these Nephilim, right? And eventually, God wanted to destroy the earth because of the Nephilim and because it was an abomination, it shouldn't happen, and whatever. Blah, 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 blah. You know, sex happens. You know what I mean? That's all. That's all I'm gonna say. It happens. It happens. But the reality is, let's take let's take our reasonable scientific minds and apply it to these stories as I talk about them this evening. Okay. Now, the book of Genesis contains some of the most famous origin myths in our culture, Western culture anyway. Maybe other cultures could care less, but every culture tells the same type of tales. Check out India. I mean, their space aliens coming down with great weapons, wiping people out, and this and that. Oh my God, they got it going on too, and some good food on top of that, man. All right, so I am craving Indian food, aren't I? So God's creation of the heavens and earth, right? Yeah, he said just like that. He was like, my God has kind of a bluesy type of thing, like, hey, Michael, how are you doing today? That's my kind. Hey, all right, God. And he's got a big nose. I always think I got a big nose because I can smell some shit going on the earth. I'm gonna judge y'all. I know what you're doing, Catholic Church. Think I don't know? Think you're gonna find your way to the heavens, to the kingdom, messing around, little boys? Ain't gonna happen. You're gonna go talk to that Lucifer. Lucifer in itself means the giver of light. Isn't that funny? And all these fallen angels aren't known for bad things. They're known to be bad because they rejected God. But if everything is God and they live within that system, then they too are under God's law. It's not like it's a decision you could make. This is all that there is, unless you could think that this floating rock in space floating around is around the sun and doing its business. We're just fleas on the dog. If you think that, then none of this means anything to you. Then people are just stupid, and you know something about them. Maybe, maybe not. I think that everything is energy, and that energy can be used, manipulated, whatever you want. So Adam and Eve and all that stuff. Let me tell you, when I think about Noah, all these stories, I'm thinking about some kind of culture that came here from some other planet because their planet was dying. And then you start looking at other close planets like Mars, the history of that, what that's made of, the stories that it told, all that Project Stargate stuff with the psychic mediums going back on Mars and mapping the place out and looking at the past, the people there, the history. There's a hell of a lot to it. If you don't believe in any of that, then really, what the heck do you got going on? Because whatever you think you understand, there's a lot more. And nobody knows everything. You know, people might even know a little tiny percentage wise, but there's a whole lot more. And it all comes down to our interpretation of facts, our perception. So, okay. So, hidden sort of among the big stories, even my sister didn't know what the Nephilim was. And she looked it up. She's a Googler. Whenever I say something, she Googles it right away. Pow! While we're on the phone, which is good because I know what I'm talking about. She's like, wow, look at this. So, hidden, not hidden, again, I'll say it. So, there are plenty of stories in the Bible that account fallen angels and a race of superhuman giants roaming the earth. Now, there are 20, no, not 20, 200 something dig sites, 220 something, 224 around the world where they dug up giant skeletons, 14 feet tall, some taller, whatever. They said the women were like 11, 12 feet tall. They found them local, upstate New York, right? Over by Waverly, New York, where they're putting the road in, and they plucked them out. And then they said, "Oh no, it was it was a place called Spanish Hill." They said it was a scam, some kind of just people were trying to just fool everyone that there were skeletons. This is like late 1800s. And on top of that, these people were in no position to scam or try to fool anybody or try to hoax anyone. These were guys digging into the hill and they found these bones. So they called out the archaeologist for Pennsylvania. Then he went to that site. He confirmed the bones. He confirmed that they were bones. They shipped all the bones off to the University of Philadelphia, where they disappeared. So yeah. So when you find the evidence, when you put the evidence out there, there's definitely an energy that doesn't want you to know, that covers it up, that moves things around. Could be government entities. Government, is all about need to know. People don't need to know, right? And this was just on the border of upstate New York and Pennsylvania. But they found over 200 of these sites around the world. So there is evidence of giants and stories of giants, right? So, but the King James version goes like this, right? I'm gonna read it like King James would. All right, you ready? And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men. They thought they were fair, and they were very horny. And they took them wives of all which they chose. They were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons came into the daughters of men, they bore children to them, and the same became of the mighty men which were of old. Big ass people. In the original Hebrew, the term was for these giants and mighty men is, of course, Nephilim, which is derived from Hebrew naphal, meaning to fall. In that sense, this is a race of giants born unto unholy unions between divine sons of God, angels, and mortal daughters of men, or better translated as the fallen ones, right? So while the giant Nephilim are barely mentioned in the Genesis narrative, they were the subject of great fascination in later apocalyptic literature, especially in the book of Enoch. Now, Enoch is an interesting dude, all unto himself, and they kind of pushed him in the back, as it were. But Enoch's got a lot to say. So, if you ever get into it, get into it. Okay. And talk about your lineage to Noah, all right? And Methuselah. Think about that. So in that text, which didn't make it into the Bible, a group of lusting angels conspires to sleep with human women, giving birth to a race of giants that spoil God's creation so completely that he has no choice but to send the floodwaters and wipe out the earth. Just kill everybody and start over again like an etch sketch. Just stuff it upside down. What about all the people? You know what I mean? That's a nasty thing to do. What about the lives of those individuals? The people who are nice, people who are naughty, the people who are just people. Wipe them all out because of a mistake. Mistakes get made. You know that, right? And if there's no difference between things, then what the hell difference does it make? So yeah, I said it. God-human hybrids in the ancient world. So scholars say there are two possible reasons why the Genesis account of the Nephilim is so short. You know what? One of my reasons, this is me. If they don't want to talk about it, they keep it short. And just like Mary, Jesus' wife Mary, and how all these men who put these Bibles together, these books and all that, they didn't want to talk about her. They didn't even put the Book of Mary in there. They got nothing. You want to read the Book of Mary? You got to look for like the Greek Bible or the Ethiopian Bible. The Greek Bible, I think, is like 50-something books. Ethiopian Bible is like over 70. That's when, and then also the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's when all that stuff starts to understand where people's heads were at. Just like today, basic survival. But there's a lot of crazy stories going on. You know what I mean? So basically, it's a truncated version. Or they think that that story that the authors of Genesis didn't bother to write down because it was such a common story. Why mention it if it's so common? Right? there's logic for you. So Kevin Sullivan, a religion professor in Illinois Wesleyan University, He specializes in ancient Jewish and Christian mysticism with a focus on angels and demons. So that's the kind of guy I talk to at a party, man. You know what I mean? Like if you go to a party and there's some dude just kind of wearing black back there in the corner, that'd be me. And then this guy will kind of just be the guy on the opposite side of the room. I look at him, he looks at me, and then you walk over. Hey, how you doing, man? Yeah, you know anything about angels and demons? Oh, why, yes, I'm the professor. And you spend the rest of your time talking about angels and demons, and maybe you fit some dragons in there at some point. All right, so across the ancient Near East and Mediterranean world, there were long-standing myths of gods falling in love or lust. Or lust. I like how they spelled it out in this article that there's a difference of love and lust, man. Lust is that short term, and then when you wake up from it, you're like, oh my God, what did I do after you're married? Now, love is love, but most of the time, people mistake it for lust. Apparently, these angels fell into the same debacle with human women and spawning god men of superhuman size, strength, and power. In ancient Greek mythology, for example, Zeus fathered the hero Hercules from a tryst with the beautiful human uh, alchemy. Alchemy. Anyway, those demigod, supposed to be demagogue figures well known to the ancient authors and readers of the Hebrew Bible, were of the mighty men of old, the men of renown, referred to in Genesis. And this short text provides a passing explanation of how they came to be. Ready? Are you ready? They is horny. The end. That's it. You know, man cannot live on bread alone. Same for angels. Mm-hmm. And my God, was it what you know about that? That's my God. What you know about that? You guys got to keep it under control. Look what you did. Look what you did. Now I have to water the earth, kill everybody because you guys couldn't keep it together. Where's the women at? Where's the angel women? How come they didn't come down, jump on the guy, right? Have a whole different, have a little dinky type of whatever. Would they also be giants? Would be some little dinky dude, little dinky angry midget. All right, so here's the text. They're superhuman because what they represent is something God never designed. Says Sullivan. They're a hybrid between beings that should have stayed in heaven and beings that should be on earth. The Nephilim are not divine in the sense that they're heading back to heaven. So they kind of trundle around the earth as a weird kind of mix, like Czech mix. Yeah, you know, the nice cheesy one. Introducing the Watchers. So the 3 verses Genesis account of the Nephilim only hints at the notion that there's unions between the sons of God and the daughters of men were a transgression. But later, Jewish writers ran with that idea and expanded the cast of characters to include a rebellious and sinful band of angels called the Watchers. Now, does that strike you as scary? The Watchers. I always feel like somebody's watching me. But aren't angels supposed to be doing that? Like, aren't they supposed to be looking out for you? You know, that angel's watching you. Oh, good. Gotta see me naked, but that's part of the job, buddy. You know what I mean? Don't feel bad. In the text known as the Book of Enoch, likely written between 300 and 200 BC. And again, they don't know. They don't know. They don't know. And that time, Lao Tzu was roaming around China saying all kinds of stuff. Everybody had their ideas. Lao Tzu would talk about the ancient masters and only a description of them. But, man, they sound like some of these fallen angels, you know, going way back before the the Yellow Emperor, which was what 5 or 6 thousand years before Christ. So that goes way back. So the Book of Enoch was likely written 5 or 6 or 8 or maybe 9,000 years. If I'm going to put a number on it, really, then I have to space it out with Noah. I have to space it out with Methuselah, and then I have to think about where Enoch fits in, and the Book of Enoch, and whoever the hell wrote that. Let's just say they didn't know have a frame of time. Everything was 40 days and 40 nights because they didn't know what the hell anything was like. They didn't have no Timex. I'm saying, you know what I mean? They didn't have any those cute little kitty calendars. Garfield, nothing. They had nothing. I saw Flintstones comedy, and the Flintstones were cavemen, and they were celebrating Christmas. The hell are they celebrating? All right. Well, this was like, right. And I don't feel bad about this story either. Because I'm one person that says, if you have a chance to be happy, be happy. Be happy and savor those moments and savor the memories. Because, man, that does not last. So in the text known as the Book of Enoch, a group of 200 angels led by the angel Semjaza. I think I found my new radio name. Hey, this is DJ Semjaza with you, Semjaza. Oh, yeah. This is DJ Semjaza. I'm going to start playing. Hey, Joe, I'm going to start playing music at DJ Semjaza. This is the midnight hour with DJ Semjaza. I love that. So he or she or whoever they were hatched a plot to take the wives, or he. Let's say some lesbian angel, think they weren't around? Of course they were. Of course there's some lesbian angels and gay angels too. You know what I mean? People tend to dumb things down. There's all types in this world and universe, apparently. So, all right, that's a plot to take wives from the beautiful and comely daughters of men. Of course, they're going to take some good looking ones. And those girls were looking for it too. You think these girls weren't psyched that some angel wanted their hand? And they'd be like, the angel come down. Hey, baby, I'm going to take you for a ride around the cosmos. Check stuff out. Check out this diamond I just dug out of that cliff. I'll give you 40 days and 40 nights of happy. Take the wives of the beautiful and comely, baby. This, I know, everyone's listening to the show is going to go to hell anyway. Oh, all right. Okay, I'm all right. They know what they're doing is a great sin. So they make a pact to follow through and don't tell anybody. So that's kind of how you get around it. And then I start thinking about sin. Jesus died for your sins. So you got to do some sin. Otherwise, the whole thing, I get that. Sin. Because they want you to feel like everything you're freaking doing is wrong. So you give them your money and that buys you out of your sin. Isn't that how it goes? Really? So the rebellious angels are called by the Aramaic word Irin, which is derived from a word meaning awake. Okay? Awake. Therefore, Irin has sometimes been translated as the awakened ones, right? But more often they're called the watchers because their job as angels was to remain vigilant and watch over mankind and look at all the dumb stuff that we do. People. Later in the Book of Enoch, even the loyal angels are called Watchers, uh, but the name is mostly associated with the bad guys. And the Watchers got bored. You think they didn't get bored? The Watchers and Nephilim corrupt the world. Are you ready for this? So in the book of Enoch, the Nephilim begot the Watchers, and human women really. All right. You got the Nephilim, which are the kids. You got the Watchers, which are the angels, right? And you got the human women, which are the ones who are the catalyst between the two, the joining between the two. Oh, so the men of renown of Genesis, right? And the great giants whose height was 3,000 ells, which is more than 3,000 meters, which is 9,140 feet tall, which obviously they weren't that tall. You know what I mean? You couldn't even clean up after someone like that. In their insatiable hunger, the monstrous Nephilim eat all of mankind's food, and when the food runs out, they start eating the men themselves. That's some pork chops right there. Pork chops and applesauce. Not only do the Watchers, I don't eat pork, by the way, just to add that in there, I was just making a Brady Bunch reference. If you could stretch it all the way back then. Not only do the Watchers bring these bloodthirsty giants into the world, but some of the fallen angels teach the women charms of the enchantments of how to use roots and plants for sorcery, as well as how to make jewelry and makeup for beautifying of the eyelids. To the men, the Watchers teach metallurgy and how to fashion swords, knives, shields, tools, breastplates, everything else that they need, right? Even furniture for the women who are going to be like, hey, make me a couch. And these guys are like, yes, ma'am. I'm your utility. So they taught them how to do stuff. Taught the women how to make some makeup. Taught them how to make weapons. And there arose much godlessness, and mankind committed fornication. And then they were led astray and became corrupt in all kinds of ways. And, I mean, look at the Clintons, really. And as men perished, they cried, and then their cries went up to heaven. And then God's like, oh man, well, all that noise down there. I'm trying to sleep. God make goddamn world. You know how long it took me? 7 days, no sleep. I was tired on that 8th. They're tired. Now you gotta cry. Oh, y'all crying about something all the time. That tough being your God. I'm tired. Tired. So the men cried, went up to heaven, and then let's see. It was only then that God intervenes and tells the angels to warn Noah of the coming flood. That's where we start getting into all that Mars talk, right? Of, is this story really from the earth? Is this an earthly story, or is this story belong, in our humankind history, but not necessarily in the same place? And that flood wasn't a flood. It was some cataclysmic event where they had to leave. And apparently, the people there were very tall, if you believe the CIA and their declassified reports. So, all right. So God intervenes. He tells Noah, tells the angels to warn. You guys go down there and tell Noah some stuff's going to happen. You better build the ark. You go drown like everybody else, like a rat. Hurry up. Y'all got 40 days and 40 nights. What the hell that means? So intended to heal the earth, as that the angels have corrupted, God further commands his loyal angels to destroy all the spirits and reprobate and the children, the watchers, because they have all wronged mankind. No, right, really, they wronged God. You cross God, that's not going to be a good day. Destroy all wrong from the face of the earth, and let every evil work come to an end. And guess what? It didn't work, God. I'm going to tell you right now. Evil is alive and well on this planet, and people suffer every day because of other people. So, yeah, there goes your flood. Two competing explanations of the origins of sin. This is my favorite part. In Genesis chapter 3, Adam and Eve are blamed for the introducing sin into the world when they eat the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge. And what a metaphor! The fruit of the tree of knowledge. You take that fruit, you got some knowledge, you're screwed because knowledge is a long path, man. And who gave it to him? But the snakes. Snake. Too bad Adam didn't see some Harry Potter, man, and learn that parcel tongue. I would have been like, shh. Eve would be like, you want my apple? I'd be like, saya, 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 saya. Have that snake run to 7-Eleven and get me a Slurpee instead. Tell Eve to keep her apple. Saya, Slurpee, saya, cherry Slurpee, saya. Later in Genesis, God decides to destroy his creation with the flood because of the wickedness of man. So how many planets do you think this happened on? Or how overall, if you are a god and you control many different planets that people are living, I'm sure that happens a lot. I'm sure you put people in the mix, anything's going to happen. You put a bunch of people in the mix, and with angels, anything's going to happen. That's the first mistake, right? The wickedness of man. Yeah, no kidding. Noah is the only righteous man on earth, so God spares him and his family. What do you got to do to be the only righteous man on the earth? Like, what do you have to do to get that confidence from God? Now, how far do you have to go? I've seen all kinds of stuff about Noah. He doesn't strike me as a responsible guy or righteous. His kids were messed up. I know that. And Noah was apparently 900 something years old and was also pretty damn big, you know. And you know, when you think of the age over 900 years old, that's written everywhere. He was old, you know. So that's another thing. How's that happen? I'm saying he wasn't from this planet. You know that the very story in that the CIA told Central Intelligence Agency and their Stargate operation, right? It was that the psychic medium who was communicating, sort of communicating, with this person that was in this place on Mars a million years ago, whatever it was, saying that the people here are anxiously awaiting the return of a vessel that left, you know, to a nearby planet that had was volcanic. It was messed up. It had all those issues. But the difference that that planet had that Mars didn't have is that the planet they wanted to go to had vegetation. It had life where the other planet didn't. I will take that and run with it in the story of Noah because you know all of DNA, all of life is based on just a one simple code, ACTG, ACTG. When you take that code, you can make whatever you want. Make all kinds of genes to determine what color your eyes are, how tall you are, how fat you are, how skinny you're going to be, whatever. With animals too, all animals, insects, whatever, all share this ACTG. If you had really good technology, you could probably punch codes and create whatever you wanted to, you know? So there's that for that. So here's the two competing explanations of the origin of sin. In Genesis chapter 3, Adam and Eve are blamed, of course. I just said that already. So God destroys everything, spares Noah. But the book of Enoch paints a very different origin of the story of sin. Here, it isn't mankind that screws everything up, but the Watchers and their heinous offspring. Sullivan says that this version of the creation story dates to the Second Temple period of Judaism, when there was a prevailing belief in a cosmic struggle between the forces of good and the forces of evil, represented by the Watchers, right? There, here's this huge amount of literature during the Second Temple period that provided a pretty significant competing narrative to Genesis, saying, says Sullivan, saying, it says that God created humans in his image and they were good, but it was the angels that messed it up. The reason there's evil in the world is because of these divine beings. Sullivan. So I guess the flood didn't wipe it all out. I guess Noah and his because his sons were assholes, man. So maybe Noah was righteous, but his kids were assholes. Assholes. If you know anything about it. Sullivan says that these two competing narratives around the origin of sin existed simultaneously within Judaism for hundreds of years, with different Jewish sects latching on to both stories. They can't get along. Fragments of the Book of Enoch, for example, were among the Dead Sea Scrolls, alongside other apocalyptic texts that foretold a final war between the divine forces of good and evil. That's what we're going through now. If you want to understand what's going on with the world and even viruses and people and the way people are headed, that's the struggle. You know, it really is a simple struggle of good and evil, and what you consider good and what you consider evil. I'll leave that there. But people are going to get what they want, aren't they? So when we get into the first century CE, though, Judeo Christian thinkers like Paul helped to develop a Christian theology that centers on Adam and Eve's transgression as the original sin for which all of mankind needs to be saved. In the emerging Christian orthodoxy, humans are the sinners and only Jesus Christ can make them whole through his saving grace. The saga of the Watchers and the Nephilim took a back seat to all of that, and of course, and the Book of Enoch. But this is the deal: it's okay to understand all of those things and breathe. You know, and like I said, it's there. It's there. These people who are trying to interpret this mess, it's their understanding. You know, all of these things is their understanding. But is it the truth? You know, and as for the battle for good for evil that goes on every day, everywhere, every town, every place, you know, there are people who make triumphs against evil. You'll never even know their names or anything about them. So there's that too. But what does that mean for you in your daily life and how you get through your life? You know, I think that when I start reading like these old texts, you know, and think the New Testament and the Old Testament were two totally different things. In the Old Testament, it wasn't good to eat meat, you know? You weren't allowed to eat animals. The New Testament it made it all good. So the Old Testament, all the stuff that was bad, you shouldn't do. New Testament made it all good. And even Noah, after he had saved all those animals on his ark, which is bizarre. Yeah, no room to poop on the ark. And the whole story is silly. It's not silly. You know what? When I was watching that stupid movie, it came down to when they said that he had pairs. Pairs, I don't know. The word pairs got me. I started looking into genetic codes and DNA and the pairs of genetic codes and all the other stuff that you need. And man, that sounded like a dude took off with a bunch of genetic code for animals and, you know, went to a planet to populate it and get it rolling, right? Terraform, whatever you want to say. So anyway, here's Jude. What does Jude have to say? Hey, Jude. And the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. You believe in any of that stuff? I think that these guys were limited. They don't even talk about Lilith, Adam's first woman. I tell people about Lilith. They're like, who? And these people are religious people, and I'm like, you never heard about Lilith, you know? Adam's first woman who wanted to be equal and was cast out of the Garden of Eden because that wasn't good enough. And then he, God crafted Eve from Adam's rib, right? But Lilith was made of the dust of the earth. Man, after that they made her the sea hag. After that they made her the devil, this and Satan's bride or whatever the hell she was. Even at one point, Eve felt bad for Lilith and went out of the Garden of Eden to console her and hang out with her. Wouldn't have been funny if they both ran off as lesbians, man. That would have changed the human history a little bit. A little bit. You know what I mean? How about the book of Revelation? Everybody loves pointing Revelation for the end of the world. And the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent who was called the devil and Satan, and the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to earth. And his angels were thrown down with him. So I don't know. I think that we can judge people, can't we? We can judge them on how they act and what they do, you know. So you are what you do. That's never lost on me. And I watch people. I listen to them. I listen to the people who always say how good they are and how righteous they are and all this other. But I watch what they do, and what they do is the opposite of what they say. They're not acting out of kindness. They're not acting out of love. And much of this in humankind is about power and control, rightfully so. Because humans aren't developed enough to have that much free will. Where people run amok, obviously, with these angels and whatnot. You know what I mean? So I like to think that humans are a work in progress. And unless some virus comes along and wipes everybody out of some cataclysm or whatever, maybe humans have a chance. But they only have a chance if they act on their own love and kindness, and then they put that out in the world. If that's your message, and that's your act, that you love your neighbor, your kindness, your understanding. You want people to succeed. You don't want to see people fail. You want to see people at their best, and those people having families, and those families taking care of those families, and there's a lot of love going on. That's what you want to see. Everything else is an abomination, man. But everything else does happen too. That's the other part of it, isn't it? It's the other part. So I'm going to end that there on Discovery Paranormal. Hope you guys had an interesting time with these fallen angels. I know that I have. I will see you next week on this here show. Bye, y'all. Bye. Bye. That's God saying bye. Have fun. Don't do anything.